Good evening. I'm Mike Marza, and this is day 2 of deliberations in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And today we had a partial verdict, counts 1 through 5, and there was some discrepancy about count 1. The jury not unanimous on a decision on count 1, which is the racketeering and conspiracy, but they have reached a unanimous decision on counts 2 through 5. So what does that mean? Well, the jury will return at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to continue their deliberations after telling the judge that they were stuck on count 1. In just a moment, we're going to be joined by our ABC News legal analysis team here. We have Bernarda Villalona to dig deeper and Channa Lloyd as well. Our conversation with both of them coming up in just a moment. But first up, let's take you inside the courtroom because Eyewitness News reporter Darla Miles has spent the past several weeks every day inside as all these developments were playing out. Darla, take us to that moment when the 6th note from the jury came in and it said, as I mentioned, they had reached a partial verdict. What was it like inside the courtroom?
Mike, here's the deal. When this note came at 4:05 p.m., everyone assumed it was the verdict, the note saying they were going to conclude deliberations for the day. Remember, there was a note earlier in the day. They asked for this long, robust list of testimony. So at 4:05, when it was announced that there was a partial verdict, everyone was noticeably stunned in the courtroom. But the biggest part was in that time when the note came back and when the note was read. That was about a 20 to 30 minute time frame where we have to wait for all parties to come back to the courtroom, for the court reporter to come back. And so when Sean Combs was brought back from his holding cell, you could see his attorney initially show him the phone where he had taken a photo of the jury note. And there was like a furrow on Combs's face, like he was really stunned by what the note was. He proceeded to sit in his chair at the defense table, and he has an army of defense attorneys, so they all huddled around him. Now, it's not uncommon for all of them to huddle and really get together and make faces and want to react intensely to these jury notes, but this one was a bit different because the way they surrounded him, they almost were blocking his reaction from the courtroom, and you could see his attorneys really making faces. Nicole Westmoreland was seen literally rubbing her temples as they were pontificating what was going on. Brian Steele of Atlanta, he was snapping his face and blinking his eyes sharply in the conversations. Tinny Garagos, you could see her shaking her head, leaning forward, talking to Combs. And then at one dramatic moment, Mark Agnifilo storms away from the huddle, goes to the front of the courtroom, retrieves the actual note, brings it back to Sean Combs, and you could see where he was holding the ripped off paper from the notepad. He put the note in front of Sean Combs' face. You could see that gravity hit Sean Combs, and then he took the note back to the front of the courtroom. So that's just the beginning of how things began to unfold with this dramatic cliffhanger with this partial verdict this afternoon.
And then, Darla, the judge told the jury, you need to go back in issuing that Allen charge to say continue your deliberations on count 1. And the jury went back and then sent out a note just moments after that and said, no, we need the night. We're going to come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. How was that taken inside the courtroom?
So let me tell you. So it wasn't an Allen charge, so we want to be very clear about that. What has happened with every single jury note, Mike, this entire 2 days that they've been deliberating, is you could see this tug of war, this tit for tat from prosecutors and defense attorneys on exactly what verbiage, what wording will be sent back to the jury regarding the note. So once Judge Arun Subramanian read the note, he asked the parties how they wanted to proceed. Federal prosecutors wanted an Allen charge. Defense attorneys wanted far less than that. They wanted to say, listen, you've only been at this a day and a half. Just relax, come back the next day. Obviously, that began the high-stakes negotiation because each party wanted their note to be sent back to the court. They then had to write up a proposal and email it to the court. All of this happened while we were sitting in the courtroom. It's dead silent at the time. The defense attorneys sending back their version, prosecutors sending back their version. And Sean Combs, during this time, you could see him with his legs crossed, his hands on his side, and you could just see him kind of just staring downward. The gravity of the moment really hit him. Now, remember, yesterday in court, we saw that moment. It was seen through closed circuit camera. They closed the courtroom, so we were asked to leave. But we saw that moment when Combs and his entire family stood. They held hands, and they had a moment of prayer. That seemed to be what Combs was doing when they were deliberating. They were going back and forth on exactly what to send back to the jury. So where they met in the middle was to reread pages 58, a few lines from 58, a few lines from 59 from the jury instruction, basically telling them, follow my instructions on the law, don't follow your gut, follow the law. You don't have to compromise on your firm opinions, but you do have to make sure you deliberate and follow the law. So that's where they met in the middle. It's not an Allen charge yet, because that obviously, as you know, as Channa and Bernarda will tell you, that's the last step, but they want to have a few more steps in between. So then what they did was they brought the jury back into the courtroom. They seated the jury. They read those specific lines of testimony, and you could see a few of the jurors' reactions. One of the jurors, she just shook her, she held her head down and she was shaking her head like she knew that she was going to be sent back in. When he was saying, don't compromise on what your beliefs are, you could see another juror saying, right, right. So they will have a chance to cool off overnight. What they were directed to do then was go back in the jury room. If they wanted to deliberate beyond 5 p.m., and that's always been their option, they could do so. But if they wanted to go home for the day, send back a note saying, we are done from the day. And so that is how that ended, Mike.
All right, we'll see what plays out tomorrow morning. Darla Miles, our thanks to you as always. Bringing in our legal team now, and it is a team, so this is a treat here for the Diddy Digital Day of Breakdown as we've been going over the past 6 or 7 weeks now, 8 weeks, I guess. Channa, Lloyd, and Bernarda Villalona. Let's start with you, Bernarda, because, I mean, you heard Darla kind of talk about the specifics and the legalese of it all. The bottom line, they're going to come back tomorrow morning. Here's the actual verdict sheet that we've both been referencing throughout the afternoon. And count 1 has 8 underlying or predicate crimes that the jury has to agree on 2 of them in order to prove count 1. What do you suspect is the sticking point in their inability to reach a unanimous decision on count 1 at this point?
So there's a few variables that could be going on. It can be either the main issue as to whether there was an enterprise, whether Sean Combs was working with his employees to commit these predicate acts, whether there was an agreement. So if you don't have the enterprise, the first starting point, then you don't have even reach the predicate acts. So you don't even have to see whether it was kidnapping, whether it was arson, whether it was bribery, whether it was witness tampering, forced labor, sex trafficking, or transportation to engage in prostitution. So the main focus is that part of the enterprise. So it can either be that, or they reached a decision as to the enterprise and that there was an agreement, but they're not able to reach a decision unanimously as to each of the predicate acts, because you don't stop once you reach 2 predicate acts. You have to deliberate on each of these predicate acts. So it could be that they're stuck on 1 or 2 or 3. We don't know. There's so many possibilities out there. What I'm concerned about, though, Mike, is that the judge didn't take the verdict. A verdict is not official until the foreperson announced in open court what the verdict is. So it's possible that these jurors, they were sent home overnight, that one of them can have a change of heart. We don't know.
And as we leave this count list up here and we bring in Channa Lloyd, you know, to Bernarda's point, and we heard some of the color, the flavor from inside the courtroom, and she described what some of the reaction was from some of the jurors shaking their head visibly, saying it seemed to be like a message, we're not going to get there. How concerning is it at this point, first of all, if you're the prosecution, and secondly, what is going through the mind of the defense tonight?
So what we see is that the jury is intimating that they are not just a little bit apart, but they are far apart. That seems to be the verbal and the body language that we see them exhibiting when they came back into the court. Now, as Bernarda mentioned, they're going to take a night off. People change their perspective. Sometimes they come up with stronger arguments that may convince someone to come over to their side. That entirely can happen. If I'm the prosecution, I am looking to get my verdict. I want a verdict. I do not want this to end in a hung jury. And so they are going to be encouraging. That's why they wanted to move immediately to the Allen charge, because they want that verdict today. The defense is wanting them to take time to make sure that they're coming to the verdict that they want. And so they were encouraging that softer instruction. Let's just reread the jury instructions, send them back, do not give them any time pressure, so that way they can come together independently.
And by the way, these jury instructions took some 2.5 hours to read.
Yes.
I mean, I'm right here in front of me.
62 pages.
And this is just so, I mean, obviously, as you would expect, it's just so legal jargon. And for these, you know, lay people, 12 people, they're trying to make sense of it all. And we already heard the notes that have come in. One in particular, Bernarda, dealt with the testimony of Cassie Ventura, ex-girlfriend of Sean Combs for 11 years. And particularly that incident in 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel in LA. Did you glean anything from what they asked for earlier in the day?
That just goes to show you how important closing arguments are. Because these jury instructions are very difficult to follow, especially when it comes to racketeering conspiracy, that's one of the hardest charges for lay people. First off, for attorneys to understand, so just imagine lay people. So that's why closing arguments are so important, especially on the prosecution side, because you need to be able to explain the law as much as you can without, intercepting the judge's prerogative in terms of he's the one who's going to give the law to this jury. But you also have to set forth the facts that fit the certain charges. And that's what the prosecution did when they specifically focused on those 3 acts, those 3 different freak-offs where there was some kind of force that was actually used. Because ding, 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 guess what happened? One of the notes that the jury sent out, they sent out asking for those 3 specific acts, different acts that the prosecution focused in their closing arguments. So for me, we thought at first, because they asked for that note, for the transcript having to deal with that testimony, that it must be that they've reached a decision as to racketeering conspiracy. As we can see now, they didn't. But now that they've heard that testimony, they've been able to reach a decision as to the sex trafficking and the transportation to engage in prostitution. I mean, I would think if I was a prosecution that it means that it's a conviction, because at least those 3 different incidents from having watched Cassie in the courtroom testify during direct examination and cross-examination, she was the strongest when it came to those 3 specific incidents. She had a vague memory as to the other freak-offs, but these 3 in particular, it was very vivid in her mind. And you have the corroboration, which would be that intercontinental video to corroborate her testimony.
And from the defense standpoint, I think the other thing you have to consider is that with Cassie Ventura, there is force.
Yes.
These are the 3 incidents where they have they have a video in one, they have a witness in one, to talk about what was this force, right? When we heard Daniel Phillip testify, he said that the response that Sean gave was, when I tell you to come, come.
An alleged escort.
Correct,
Yeah.
an alleged escort. So was that getting her to go back to the freak-off?
And he heard the smacking.
Right,
So,
but was it just force in general? Was he actually dragging her back to the freak-off? Because if it's just domestic violence in incident, that does not lead you to trafficking. And that's what the defense wanted to put in their mind during closing statement. And that's why I think they're revisiting these items.
All right, so let's fast forward. Channa, let's begin with you on this question, because I want to get both your perspectives on this. You've interviewed jurors after a case, and this is certainly a high-profile case. Take me into the jury room tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. After knowing what we know and how this is all unfolded. They've slept on it. What's that like when they close that door tomorrow morning?
When they come in tomorrow morning, typically what's going to happen is normally the coolest head is going to say, guys, let's walk through this one more time. They're going to start from the beginning. Everyone is going to look at the evidence, and then they're going to say, arguments, and they're going to want to discuss why it is that some feel that this is guilty and why some feel this is not guilty, and they're going to go back through it. The jury is always going to follow the judge's instructions, and they're going to give it a good faith effort to try to come to some continuum. Now, if we see that they are too far apart, another note will come out to that judge, and I expect that we will see it in probably under 3 hours.
Interesting. And you suspect as well, maybe, just like Channa had alluded to earlier, even with a second note saying we're hung on the count 1, you still suspect the judge to say, try one more time?
So the way that some judges do it is that they call it a soft Allen, meaning that they're not going to give the full Allen charge where they tell the jury, look, another jury of 12 is not more capable or more competent than you are, that you should put your thoughts aside and listen to the thoughts of others without compromising your views and your position, but listen to everyone. In terms of the soft Allen charge, it's just going to be that. Probably just a little bit information from that Allen charge, but not going full throttle as to the entire Allen charge. And then the hopes is that with that, this jury is going to be able to reach a verdict. But if they send another note, then they can go to the full Allen charge. Or the prosecution may just say, look, no, judge, you gave them something soft while it's not designated, and soft Allen charge is still something similar to it. So I think you should give the full charge right now, because if not, it's going to seem like you're forcing this jury to reach a decision, which is what the defense is going to argue on appeal if there is a conviction.
And finally, there is a caveat to all of this. The judge also has a say in how this all shakes out. What's the title of that, and what could possibly happen?
Absolutely, Mike. There's a Rule 29 motion that is pending. The judge has not ruled on it. What is it? It is a judgment of acquittal that the defense has put forth to say, we find that the prosecution has not met the legal burden. How does it work in operation? The judge can either have made a determination, which he did not, and we know that this is a brilliant judge. once we get the verdict back, if we get a guilty and the judge says that the prosecution has not met their legal burden, he can set aside the jury's guilty verdict and enter an acquittal for that particular charge. So we do know that that is out there, it's in the background, and this judge has reserved his rights. So even when we get the verdict back, that might not be the end of this.
Would that happen immediately?
Typically, it is going to happen immediately. He does have the discretion to do it after and to release them. So, but this judge seems to be very methodical. I expect that if he is expecting to do that, he has already done that, and we will hear it very shortly thereafter.
Interesting. We should mention as well, tomorrow comes on the eve of what was going to be a break already with the 4th of July holiday. Court was not going to be in session on Thursday and certainly not on the 4th on Friday. So it does seem like it is likely, correct me if I'm wrong, we expect to hear some sort of conclusion tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Channa, always a pleasure. Appreciate your perspective. Bernarda, you as well. Great to see you. Stay
Great
with
to see
Eyewitness
you.
News and ABC7NY for any new notes and updates. These things change by the minute, as we've seen play out over the past couple of days. And as soon as a verdict is reached, we'll be live on the air and online with complete coverage at ABC7NY.